In this video, we're going over the initial notes for y-intercept and slope-intercept form. So we first looked at what a y-intercept means. My definition of y-intercept is the point where a line crosses or intersects the y-axis. So remember, the y-axis is the line on the graph that is up and down versus left to right. The characteristics of a y-intercept is going to be abbreviated by the letter B. Now, example of a y-intercept is going to be from a graph. So here's our y-axis, here's our x-axis, and then we're going to have somewhere on our y-axis that a line crosses it. A non-example of a y-intercept is if we had a graph and we had the point on the y-axis instead. So remember, this is our y, here's our x. So what's wrong about this example is that this dot is on the x-axis and not the y. So this would not be an example. This point, this red point, would not be an example of a y-intercept. This would actually be an x-intercept. So remember to circle, underline, whatever you need to do, that this is not an example because this dot is on the x-intercept, or x-axis. Alright. So then we went on to our y equals mx plus b, or a slope-intercept form, where our formula begins. So in this, we have y equals mx plus b. This was the foldable that the first one, the third, fourth, and fifth have a little flap, and the equals and plus sign does not have a little flap because we cut it out. So the y is going to represent our dependent, and this is what we put on the inside of our flap, dependent variable. The m is going to represent our slope. Our x is going to represent our independent variable. And b is going to represent our y-intercept. So reminder, our y is going to be our dependent because that is what we're going to get out of our function, or out of our function machine. So this is going to be our output. Our x is going to be our input, or our independent. It doesn't matter what the output's going to be at the time of we're putting in the value of x. Whatever we put in for x is going to determine what we get out of the function or the dependent variable. So our x, reminder, is input. So the examples that we had were these two right here, where you were given an equation and you had to first find the slope, find the y-intercept, and also graph it. So we're going to come in here and talk about the two things we have to identify first. So first, I always like to go ahead and write the slope-intercept right above it. So our slope is going to be that -1/2, which is m that represents in our slope-intercept form. So our slope is -1/2. Now once we go and graph this, this is telling me -1 over +2. So -1 is going to tell me to go down 1 and to the right 2. Now my y-intercept, or my b. My b is 1 in my equation given. So my b and my y-intercept is +1. So my y-intercept point is at 1. So I'm going to go to my graph. I'm going to find where I have +1 on my y-axis. And then my slope is telling me to go down 1 to the right 1, 2. So there is my second point. Now if I want to, I can go ahead and create that line. Or I could go and find more points. So down 1 to the right 1, 2. So I was very close. There's 1. Now instead of going down 1 and to the right 2, I could have also done the opposite. So I could have gone up 1 and to the left 2, which would have been negative to go to the left. The reason why I can do this either way is because -1 divided by +2 is the same value as +1 divided by -2. It still gives me -1/2. So I can go back to my graph, and instead of going down 1, I'm going to go up 1 to the right 1, 2. So there's another point. Now, going on to the next example. So now we have our y equals mx plus b. We have our m, which is 2. And because m equals slope, our slope is 2. To tell us how to move on the graph, we're going to want to create the slope into a fraction if it's not already in a fraction. So we've got 2 over 1, because if we divide any number by 1, it's still itself. So if we have 100 and we want it to stay 100, but we want it in fraction form, we want 100 over 1. Same thing with this 2. We still want it to equal 2, but we're going to put a 1 under it, because now we know we have to move up 2 and to the right 1. Now to keep it +2, to go the opposite way, we have -2 over -1, which gives us +2. So we could do, or -2 to go down over -1 to go to the left. Now we're going to go find our b, which is right here. Our b is -2, so our y-intercept is at -2. The first thing we graph always is our y-intercept. we cannot graph our slope. So y-axis, x-axis, y-axis, starting at the origin, going down 2. So -2 is my y-intercept. Then I have my slope. So I've got up 2, 1, 2, over to the right 1. So there's 1 point. Up 1, up 2, over to the right 1. Or starting at my y-intercept, I can go down 2, 1, 2, to the left 1. And there's another point. And there's my line. So any questions, please ask as we go.